Hey everyone, I'm Jeff Haynes, Senior Editor of Video Games at Common Sense Media, and I'm here today with a quick look at Ghostwire Tokyo. It's a game that came out on March 25th, 2022 for the PlayStation 5 and Windows PC. Now, quick note of warning right at the very beginning of this particular video. We've tried to cut out a lot of the content that might be a little bit alarming, a little bit frightening for some of the viewers, but some of that is a little bit unavoidable. This game does deal with a lot of supernatural creatures, demons, yokai, other creatures of Japanese mythology and folklore. There really isn't any blood or gore within this game, but there definitely are a lot of jump scares and a lot of frightening imagery. There's also some mature language within the title. We've tried to cut down on some of that within some of the dialogue sequences, but some of it is a bit unavoidable, and so we do let you know that right up front. If you happen to have any other questions about any of the content that you might find within Ghostwire Tokyo, or any other form of media that you might be interested in, be sure to always go to our website over at commonsensemedia.org, where we'll have a full breakdown of this game and all other forms of media on our website. So what is Ghostwire Tokyo? Well, right now the game winds up taking place in Shibuya, a district of Tokyo itself, and as you see, you're introduced to Akito, a young man who was trying to make his way to the hospital to visit his sick sister, but winds up finding himself in the middle of an accident and sprawled out in the middle of one of Shibuya's famous crosswalks. Unfortunately for Akito, and in many ways all of the denizens of Tokyo itself, they've basically found themselves attacked by what seems to be some kind of supernatural fog. In fact, anybody that winds up coming into contact with it winds up disappearing, having their soul essentially ripped from their body. They wind up also being replaced by these ghosts and demons, many of whom have no face, they don't have heads, they have other characteristics that are normally found within a lot of Japanese nightmarish tales. Fortunately for Akito, he finds himself merged with the spirit of a guardian known as KK, which gives him the ability to perform different spells and attacks known as elemental weaving. It gives him the power of wind, eventually of fire and water, as well as the ability to block some of their attacks, thereby allowing him to survive some of their strikes and potentially perform his own killing blow, which was taking out the spiritual core from their corporeal forms in this world. It's a really interesting balance of using the elemental and the elements of nature against the supernatural creatures that you come across. Now, some of these creatures actually wind up having very odd abilities and takes on things. For instance, you see these schoolgirls simply watching their spirits kind of running across this graffitied wall, which is a very odd trait for them, but then again, they do seem to be the spirits of schoolgirls, so here and there you'll see some of them at arcades playing or doing other things that kids might. The other interesting thing about that, however, is that it winds up being one of those circumstances where you wind up trying to learn the abilities of each particular enemy that you wind up facing. For instance, these schoolgirls like to do a lot of flips, a lot of kicks, they like to throw objects at you. Knowing exactly what each enemy winds up doing at any particular point in time is actually vital, because frequently you will be besieged from all sides, and knowing exactly what's being thrown at you, if it does actually get thrown at you, as well as knowing how to counter these attacks, will be very, very important to your success. And you'll actually see a little bit of that a little bit later on. But frequently, when you're playing the game, you're discovering a lot of what's happening along with Akito himself. In fact, in this particular scene that you see on screen right here, you see that one of those faceless Japanese salarymen style ghosts and the Japanese schoolgirl that happens to be headless have captured some of these spirits and are sending them away to some kind of nether realm. What exactly that means, why exactly they're doing it, you don't entirely know. But what you are finally told at a later point in time is that you have the opportunity to possibly save some of these spirits before they wind up getting sent away to these realms. In fact, there are certain side quests where some of these soul cubes will pop up, and you have a limited amount of time to basically block any and all attacks from some of these ghosts and spirits, some of the yokai that wind up popping up, before they can either absorb the power of those cubes or send them away, thereby taking out those spirits and reducing the population of Japan. Other times you'll find as you're moving along different places, going into different buildings, fulfilling other quests, you wind up getting pulled into some of these alternate dimensions itself. For instance, right here, trying to do this particular side quest, which was in a Japanese bathhouse, you find yourself pulled to this odd nether realm of a highway or flooded area. Nobody really knows exactly what's going on. But this is a really interesting demonstration of some of the supernatural areas that you wind up fighting in. As you can see, as I mentioned earlier, you'll be facing off against a lot of creatures that wind up just popping in out of thin air. And frequently, these areas will come in waves, so you'll have to face off against all of them as they wind up coming at you from all sides, keeping an eye on the radio that you see in the center of the screen to have an idea of what the biggest threat happens to be, but also figuring out exactly how you can replenish your energy because you're not in a regular space. If you see some of the floating objects around that seem to be glitching in and out, those are kind of objects from the spiritual realm that are also trying to merge with the living realm of Earth. So you can actually destroy those objects to get certain elemental powers to replenish your own spent stores, thereby allowing you to defeat these creatures much more easily. At other times, however, when you're doing some of the side quests, you'll find yourself going up against other spirits or otherworldly creatures that have their own particular quests that they're doing. For instance, in this one, this specter that you see is a really malevolent one that has managed to capture a spirit known as a Zashiki Warashi. And that spirit is actually a good luck spirit for certain people as long as you treat it well and you do certain things to take care of it. Unfortunately for the specter, it simply wanted the good luck without trying to take care of it, which basically cursed it even further. Fortunately for Akito, he has the ability to use magic and hand seals to basically seal away the specter's power. That's one of the things that you'll actively be doing when you're playing the game, is using some of that magic, which you'll draw whatever the pattern happens to be on screen, which comes up at random, to seal away that ghost's power, thereby allowing you to move forward. In fact, now that we've done that, we can actually break out some Shio Senbei crackers, place them in the offering bowl, and the Zashiki Warashi shows back up, knowing that it's safe. At that particular point in time, we've managed to fulfill the element of the quest, and we can actually go back and get our reward. One of the interesting things about the side quests, and there are dozens of side quests over this open world exploration of modern day Tokyo, is that, of course, you'll wind up getting money and you'll wind up getting experience. In this particular case, however, because we've returned the Zashiki Warashi to this elderly ghost, we also wind up getting a Magatama. And a Magatama winds up being one of those items that you use to unlock additional skills, unlock additional powers, and make Akito and KK much more powerful. In some cases, that means that the shots that you'll have from your elemental weaving spells can contact more people, or more enemies, I should say, because these are not people. These are definitely spirits and ghosts and demons. So you can attack more demons at once. Some of them will actually allow you to glide and basically float or fly further than possible. Other times, it will allow you to weaken the enemies that you face for a much longer period of time. So if you are attacked and you have to defend yourself, you can always go back and defend yourself, possibly heal up, and then go back and launch yourself into the fight. It's not solely the humans that have disappeared that you're also trying to help out. Particularly in Ghostwire Tokyo, the pets of the city have also been left behind. Unfortunately, their owners have vanished, as I mentioned earlier, so you have the opportunity to pet the dogs of the city, but you can also feed them after you've read their thoughts. And if you happen to have different food that you have, whether that's dog food or you simply choose to feed them from your own stores, you wind up being able to follow them, and they'll run to a spot and dig up meika, or money, which you can then use to buy additional items, buy gear, use to unlock different items in shops. But you can also go into different areas and have your own separate experience. Of course, the dogs are roaming the city. Sometimes they'll give you quests, but so will the cats of the city. In fact, Neko Umada have actually taken up residence within many of the convenience stores. And as you can see right here, this particular cat, who's just simply floating around waiting for a possible customer like you to arrive, will offer you a ton of different items, whether that happens to be arrows for your spiritual bow or katashiro, which is something that I will show you in a quick second. You'll also run into things like kibidango or cucumbers or mochi, any other items that you may want or you may need. One of the interesting things about Ghostwire Tokyo and all of the food that it constantly presents to you is that that's the system that by which you'll use to heal yourself. Instead of using a health potion or a healing kit, you'll actually eat food, whether that happens to be food from the living world or food from the spiritual realm. And whenever you do that, not only will you recover energy, but depending upon what you've eaten, you'll also get a temporary buff to your stats, especially if you happen to have food from the spiritual realm, which can sometimes give you additional blocking ability, the additional option to sneak faster or do more damage when you are stealthily attacking enemies, etc., etc. So it really does benefit you to constantly eat whenever you wind up taking any kind of damage, to also extend your health bar and gain the benefits of that. Now, one of the things that you possibly saw a little bit earlier, maybe like 5 or 10 seconds ago, but also what you also see on screen right now, is the ability to absorb spirits. Now, again, all of the people of Tokyo basically vanish thanks to the supernatural fog. If you use a katashiro, which is a paper doll shaped generally in the form of a human being, you can take them to a phone booth, which seems kind of odd because in 2022, everybody uses cell phones. But these phone booths really have kind of a Ghostbuster-style treatment, mainly because KK and his team basically set these up as a way to protect the people of Tokyo against some of the spiritual incursion. And what you wind up doing is using the katashiro to redeem the spirits that you have collected over the course of your adventure, thereby gaining additional mecha, additional experience, and helping everybody recover from the attacks of the spiritual realm into the living world. At other times, of course, however, you're not simply just fighting enemies, you're trying to resolve other things that seem to have happened. Much of this winds up coming into contact with a lot of the folklore of Japan. So, for instance, in this particular case, this mission has a doll that seemed to be possessed by a vengeful spirit. And what you actually find out is that the doll itself happened to have been cursed. The spirit of the doll simply was trying to protect the other spirit, and because of the straw doll that happened to have had a curse placed upon it, it wound up acting in a seemingly harmful manner. But once you wind up casting a hand seal upon this seal, the straw doll, you wind up negating the curse itself and freeing the spirit. Of course, you also wind up having to do that at shrines too to gain access to other areas, but as you can see right there, this is also one of the jump scares where a vengeful spirit with these shears tries to stop you from actually cleansing that Tori shrine and also gaining access to the items that happen to have been in that particular location. Fortunately, you also get certain hints and clues just given by the environment about possible ways that you can use things like the explosive canisters that happen to be floating around to defeat it. Again, whether it happens to be things like the yokai or these vengeful spirits or anything else, a lot of the enemies that you're going to be facing off against stem from a lot of Japanese mythology and folklore and ghost tales. So much of it, especially if you don't happen to have any particular experience or knowledge of those, you can always look in the menu screen and get a lot more of the lore behind it. And in fact, as you're going through the adventure, you'll even have the opportunity to find out much more about these enemies that you'll be facing off against, and in some cases even hints of how you can best defeat them in an efficient manner so that you can move forward with your task of freeing Tokyo from the grasp of all of these demons. So since we managed to defeat that enemy, we cleanse the shrine, we gain a little bit more access to the neighborhood, but in this particular case we wind up gaining the water weaving ability, which gives us kind of an area of effect attack against all of the opponents while also spraying them them with kind of a cleansing spiritual water. You won't solely have to deal with just spells in that manner. In some shrines, you'll get things like items that you can trade to the Nekomata for different quest goals, or stun talismans in this particular case. Because again, now that we have these ghosts that possibly have these shears that could pop up at any particular point in time, we already know that they're a very hardy spirit, but if you use the stun talisman, you can freeze them in place, thereby allowing us to creep up from behind and use a hand seal to inflict a lot of damage on these enemies. Again, one of the things that you always need to figure out is the best way to eliminate some of these opponents, because at times you never know if, while you're facing against one that's facing you head on, if you're going to be surrounded or attacked from all sides. So you always have to kind of keep your head on a swivel as to what could be going on. So we're coming up on the very tail end of this video, but I wanted to kind of flash back to a sequence that occurs early on at the very beginning of the game, especially when Akito really doesn't have an idea of what's happening or what exactly the purpose of seeing all of these ghosts just simply arrive in Tokyo and in Shibuya in particular happens to be. What he discovers by way of this very odd vision within this really strange spirit realm is that his sister seems to be targeted by this man in a Hanya mask. And as the Hanya, as he winds up becoming known, kind of demonstrates, she winds up becoming part of his plan, a central part of his plan to somehow merge the dead world, or the spiritual supernatural world, with the land of the living, or modern day Tokyo. What exactly his purpose is, what exactly his plans happen to be, that's kind of something that you have to find out over the course of the game. Of course, KK, Akito's spiritual guide, and the Hanya have definitely got a clear history of facing off and fighting each other, and that's one of the things that you'll also uncover as you play the game. In fact, you discover that there's a whole bunch of reasons why both of these characters do not like each other for very, very specific reasons. Unfortunately for both Akito and KK at this particular moment within the game, neither one of them is powerful enough to take on or stop the Hanya with his plans. In fact, what you find out very quickly is that it's not solely him that has the ability to create the demon parades, summon the ghosts, summon the specters, the Oni, the Tengu, some of the other creatures and supernatural beings that wind up populating the land. In fact, as you can see in one quick second, he has lieutenants that wind up not only shackling Akito and KK, but they also wind up using their own formidable abilities to help bring this kind of spiritual apocalypse to the streets of Tokyo. And it'll be up to you to figure out exactly how you can best defeat them quickly before they wind up erasing any chance of defeat. In this particular case, the Hanya winds up proving that he's definitely much more than a match for Akito and KK, and that's where we're going to have to leave it for right now. But if you're looking for any other details about Ghostwire Tokyo or any other form of media, be sure to always check out our webpage over at commonsensemedia.org.